Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Elliot Kaplan, and we're here today to talk about paradoxical interventions. I guess my first question is, it's a small group. Actually, I want to go around, maybe people can introduce themselves a little bit. But has anybody worked with paradoxical interventions? Anybody? No, nothing. Okay, not on purpose, okay. Did anybody see the videos that are up on YouTube? No? Okay, you didn't have to, because I'm going to show them today. But it's a very exciting approach because people change and you don't necessarily tell them to change. My background is actually in Gestalt therapy. I have a PhD in psychology. I'm an LCSW in New York. And I also have a science background. So I guess in coming up with what you're going to be seeing, part of that you'll see is obviously related to my science background. But I guess my point is that psychology tries to be very scientific. And the medical profession doesn't really accept psychology so much as being scientific. And I think one of the reasons is that we don't use the theoretical systems that the medical profession basically relies on. Right? Yeah, by the way, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, I'm going to be doing a sex offender conference. And I got the usual response, you really can't help those kind of people. There's a recidivism rate and they go right back to doing it. And I said to him, if you really know what you're doing, you really can work with them. It's like, you really can be successful. And, I know that obviously most of us are dealing with sex offenders, but I think that people's impression is that working with sex offenders is very, very difficult, okay? And actually my hope today is to show you that if you're focused and you know what you're really trying to accomplish, you'll see that it's really very doable. Okay, so let's, I don't know if many of you are aware of this. I thought it was an interesting fact that in terms of the universe, gravity is represented by mass and density of an object, okay? And in terms of our solar system, which I thought was really intriguing, is that 99.85 of the mass of the solar system is in the sun. Right? Isn't that amazing, right? And that basically you have 0.15 is, the planets and the meteors and all the other things that go around that. So
we felt like nothing, we weren't wrong.
Huh?
We felt like nothing, we weren't wrong.
Well, we're just like this, you'd think, we're this little itsy bitsy, right? But the point is that the gravity in terms of the sun, and that's not obviously the dominant force, attachment force, okay, for the solar system. Okay, just thought you'd be interested in that. All right, we'll see where that goes. In terms of working with clients, if somebody's motivated, somebody wants to change, it's not really a challenge, okay? I think the real challenge of being able to, in terms of treatment, is being able to influence somebody who really they're coming in, they have no intent, they have no desire, they have no want to change, okay? And if you're able to do that, then that's the real work in terms of psychology. If somebody's motivated, hey, I got a problem, I really want to change, well, hey, whatever you do with that person, it's likely that it's going to be helpful. The penalty for being late is sitting in the front. Okay. All right. Here you go. So what we're going to really be looking at today is working with people who really come in and in their mind, they have no desire to change. So does anybody here ever work with any kind of clients like that? That they really don't want to, right? A few people, okay. All right. So what are the goals? What's the goals and objectives for today? We're going to analyze a group intervention with youth displaying problem sexualized behavior, PSB behavior. Okay. And one of the things that I really want to get across is, in psychology we talk about change. We're going to help the person change, right? Just in general, when you're trying to help someone change, in your mind, what are you looking to do for that person? What are you looking for that you know that change happened? Whoever.
Behavioral change usually.
Okay, behavioral change. Okay. All right. So if you see some kind of behavioral change, that's what you're focused on.
Yeah, they're not doing what they used to do.
That's a good sign. Right. Okay. Okay. Unfortunately, I think I'm glad that you said that, because sometimes clients know what you want them to do, and they won't do that behavior, right? But they're doing all this other stuff, and sometimes we get into a problem because, well, the client's not doing the worst behavior. They're doing other stuff that's problematic, and they say they're never going to go back to that old behavior. Especially if we're talking about sexualized behavior. And how do we know? How do we gauge whether that's actually true or not? Okay, so the hope is that part of that is getting across in the session today, how you can kind of tell. But I think in the profession, we really haven't defined change. All right, that's one of the things that in psychology we know when it happens, but we haven't quite defined it. So one of the objectives today is to actually diagram what change actually looks like. The other learning objective is to learn how strengthening the therapeutic alliance will actually help bypass treatment resistance. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do in terms of treatment is really not even deal with the resistance, to tell you the truth, just kind of bypass it. The last thing is to demonstrate why treating secondary non-criminogenic symptoms such as anger, poor social skills, self-esteem will influence primary targeted but hard to reach volatile behaviors. So in other words, sometimes you have a client who has a sexualized behavior, and I think that very often in the field we assume, well, they have that sexualized behavior, so we're going to have to work on that sexualized behavior, right? And the truth is you don't have to, as strange as that may sound, because if you work on the anger, if you work on the social skills, and you see changes in those areas, that actually will impact the primary targeted behavior. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. Okay. In terms of paradoxical interventions, they're effective with basically treatment-resistant clients. So if we're talking about borderline personality, obviously sexual behavior, oppositional defiant behavior, eating disorders, addictive disorders, and impulse control disorders as well. But in terms of we're going to talk about in terms of cognitive behavior and psychodynamic, the research actually shows that paradoxical interventions are even more effective than those interventions, and we'll talk about why. If you're familiar at all with paradoxical interventions, you know that all the major therapists, all the well-known therapists, including Alfred Adler, who first actually documented paradoxical interventions in 1923, Milton Erickson, Viktor Frankl, Haley, Minuchin, Fritz Perls from Gestalt therapy, and Virginia Satir all use paradoxical interventions. So in terms of paradoxical interventions, what are they known for? They're known to be counterintuitive. Basically, you avoid power struggles with your client. It actually promotes rapid change, okay? And it's not only rapid change because people feel, well, if it was very rapid, then they're going to go back, right, just as fast. But it turns out that it's actually long-term change as well, okay? However, paradoxical interventions have been criticized, okay? And, you're just doing reverse psychology, right? That's just reverse psychology. And it's really not real therapy. It's kind of reverse psychology there, okay? But you have to think about, even if somebody changes, let's say you're doing a reverse psychology thing, right? And they change a little bit. Obviously, something happened there, right? I mean, I'd be interested in what just happened. Why would they even change for a week or even 2 weeks? They might fall back, but like what happened in that, interaction. Another criticism is that paradoxical interventions may seem very provocative, and for some therapists they're dangerous. So we better not do that. Okay, and we kind of stick with what we're familiar with. But unfortunately, what we're familiar with, as we know, doesn't always work on helping the client move forward. In my view, paradoxical interventions are not dangerous. If you're trying to trick the client, okay, if you're using reverse psychology, and you're basically telling the client, you're going to tell the client to go left because you really want him to go right, you're going to trick him, okay, it's going to backfire on you. It could backfire on you, okay? So part of it is to recognize that when I'm talking to a client and say, you know, you go left, you always go left, that's what you do, I'm not really lying to them and I'm not really trying to trick them. I'm just saying this is what you always do anyway, okay? Now if the client decides to do something different than go left, then that's their business. But as strange as it sounds, my intent is not to trick the client into going right. Okay, my intent is to simply explain to the client, get across to the client, that you're a very predictable person, and predictably, you seem to always go left. Okay? The other issue with paradoxical interventions, and even though it's a very powerful intervention, as you'll see through the video, people have had difficulty explaining what's going on there. There are books on paradoxical interventions. Anybody seen any of the books on it? Nothing? All right. I've opened up a few of the books, and actually I realized I have to write a book, okay? But the books are very complicated. I mean, it seems like, whoa, you know, it goes up, it goes down, and it goes this way, and it goes that way. And it's like, wow, this is really complicated. And again, it's really not complicated at all. That's what's interesting about it, if you're kind of, again, focused on what you're trying to accomplish. As I said, my background is in Gestalt therapy. One of the main things I learned from Fritz Perls was, he talked about the process of change. And he said, you know, very often people make programs that it should be like this, we're going to make change and it should be a certain way. And he pointed out that the idea of deliberate change never works.